Shalom, shalom. Kol halalim la Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, elder bishops of Great Millstone. Shalom to the prophets of that body. Shalom to the 144,001 third. May peace and blessings be upon you and your households. Okay. We're going home soon. A couple more prophecies to play out. And as these prophecies, will be playing out very soon, especially the R, F to the I to the D. And prior to that, the prelude, which is the digital wallet. All right. Everything's pretty much digital anyway, but they want to take it a little step further. And it's November the 3rd today. Brakti Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai. We're approaching the end of the year according to the Gregorian calendar. Right? 2026. And, the EBT aspect, the SNAP aspect, people being pushed into a corner. Maybe Trump might chuck some relief at them. All right, we'll see how that plays out. Okay, benefit situation here in the UK. A lot of people assume that benefits are being given to people that are so-called illegal, and they're trying to amplify the color aspect. Every time something goes wrong, there's some kind of stabbing or shooting, or they say usual suspects. But lo and behold, it turns out to be a so-called white man. But nevertheless, all these different aspects are happening around the world, and they're all alluding to one thing, okay, which is the push of this digital agenda on a hyper scale, right? That's a term I can use, or amplifying it, leading to the R, F to the I to the D. Elder Amawan Gabar, received some information from a sister that's in the truth, a married lady, of course, a married sister who's in the truth. And, everyone, she's had some dreams about the charagma. A lot of people are having dreams about the charagma, meaning the mark of the BEAST. So it's all going in that direction. All right. And I also just chucked in the search engine of Google, and I wrote the stabbing on the train. What does that mean in terms of digital ID and security and RFID chips or RFID chipping? Okay, it says a stabbing incident on a train highlights public safety concerns, leading to public debate where proponents argue that digital ID systems and related technologies, okay, like expanded CCTV and potentially RFID for asset crowd tracking, could enhance security through improved surveillance, identification, and emergency response, while opponents raise significant concerns about privacy, mass surveillance, and potential exclusion of vulnerable individuals. All right, a lot of people actually shook up about this, especially the older generation. All right, about the stabbing on the train. There were, I don't know, several people or 9 people involved. I want to play the news segment in a second, right? And so when people are talking about safety and public concern and safety of men, women, and children and things of that nature, right? And then somebody mentions privacy, mass surveillance, and potential exclusion of vulnerable individuals. People are going to say, "F the mass surveillance part. What about public safety? I want my children." Women are going to say, "I want my children to be safe. I want to feel safe on the trains." Older people are going to say, "Man, get rid of these hoodlums, lock them up, throw away the key." That's what they're going to say, all right? A lot of people that are not so tech savvy, not so clued up, they're going to say, "Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead with the agenda of what the government is proposing, because it's only going to help us," because they assume the government are the good guys. People actually still believe that bullshit that the government are the good guys, when actually the government are the worst criminals, all right? So these things, if you look at it from the outside looking in, all right. Now, allegedly, it could be AI, it could be crisis actors, it could be any of the above, because we know how this devil works, the so-called white man. We know Hegelian dialectic. We know that revelation of the method. They're going to do their problem, reaction, solution agenda, right? They're going to always do that to push the ball that they want, to push the agenda they want to push in a certain direction. Okay, so for the current, let's just say a current or a wave in a sea or ocean needs to be pushed in a certain direction, right? So you need that energy to go in that direction. So this is what they're doing to push it towards more of the digital agenda or digital ID, digital wallet, and then eventually, if that doesn't come up to par, they will uh, do the RFID, CHIP. They will push that, okay, when the economy crashes, or however Yahweh Bashim Yashai will make it happen. But as you can see, these devils are doing their thing, right? Now, potential implications and arguments, proponents' views, enhanced surveillance and response. Proponents suggest that integrating digital IDs with existing security infrastructure such as CCTV, which is closed circuit television, networks could enable faster identification of suspects and a quicker, more coordinated emergency response to incidents. All right? Catching scum. People are going to say, yeah, get them scum MFers. Get them. You know, a lot of people will throw away their own freedoms, not knowing, throw away their own freedoms just to get these kinds of people. Now, I've been surfing the net. I've chucked on a couple of different news articles and, see if I can find a lineup of these individuals. Now, more than likely, if they do produce a lineup of these individuals, more than likely they're going to be some, brown guys or whatever, from any, I don't know what particular nation. But here in the UK, they can choose from Elam, Ishmael, Ham, or they could use Jake, right? Even though Jake is scattered around amongst everyone, but they're going to use usually people of color. Now, you add this horrific incident, and then you add people of color, and then you add safety. What's Esau, the so-called white man, going to say? And other nations, what's the so-called white man going to say? They're going to say, you know what? Where they're going to indirectly basically say in their own mind that, you know what, we're willing to give up our freedoms as long as scumbags like this, and inside they're going to be saying as long as N-words or gollywogs like this, or Arabs like this or whatever, right, or dot heads like this, Pakis like this, as long as they're caught and they're shipped away or locked up, we're willing to give up our freedoms. So the so-called white man will do that. Improved identification and tracking. A robust digital ID system potentially linked to travel information could help authorities track individuals' movements on public transport networks, assisting investigations post incident. Right? Specific RFID uses. While human chipping is largely a niche, controversial idea, right? But it's happening in Sweden and other parts of the world, China and all that. RFID technology is already used for tracking assets and vehicles in public transport. Okay, and so-called humans are also an asset. All right, for these so-called elites, they're goyim, in it, cattle. All right, so tracking assets and vehicles in public transport systems. Some argue that using RFID for crowd management, example via wristbands at events, could be expanded to general public transport to monitor density and identify potential issues. Though this raises major privacy concerns. See, as you can see, the more they talk about it, the more they push it, the more people's become what's the word? Um, Emotionally unattached to this society. They become what's the word? There's a word for it, man. Um, that term where children get used to violence, they become what's the word? Let me just say it. What's that term where children get used to violent games, and when they see something violent, they don't get deterred? What's that term? Desensitization. That's it. Yeah. So the more they push it, the more people get desensitized to the RFID thing and the digital agenda, right? And they've got their puppets in place to push the agenda as well, right? Opponents' concerns, privacy risks, function creep. Yeah, people are worried about this, the digital aspect of the RFID, monitoring people's lives, uh, exclusion of vulnerable groups, ineffective against ineffectiveness against violent crime. Critics argue that ID systems do not address the root causes of violent crime and they may not stop a determined attacker, as criminals often ignore existing laws and checks. Of course they do. You know, the same way people say guns, oh, there's no guns in the UK. UK is soft. Listen, people walk up to you and stab you here in broad daylight. All right. Okay. Face to face. Some of these criminals, you know, they're crazy. All right. And firearms, same as drugs are illegal in the UK. There's firearms in the UK. All right. All sorts. All right. In essence, a violent crime like a train stabbing acts as a catalyst for ongoing debates about the balance between security and civil liberties, bringing technological solutions like digital ID and RFID into sharp focus as potential tools for public safety despite substantial civil liberties and privacy concerns. All right. Revelation 12, verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. All right, now let's go to the news. Let's go to the news segment, because where is it? Yeah, let's play this one.
Where is that guy? What do you want to write down?
And obviously, this made big news as well in the States, so everybody's talking about it. So it's got a lot of, I mean, this specific incident is under the spotlight, so to speak.
About half an hour, 20 minutes.
I saw someone who was very badly injured, very lots of blood around them. They were either collapsed or like looking about, they were about to fall over, and people were trying to pass back hoodies and things to pack the wound.
I was in Coach H. I was literally just listening to Audible on my phone, and then I had guys suddenly run past, going, "Run, run!" There's a guy stabbing literally everyone, everything. At first, there was a few of us kind of looking at each other, like thinking it was a joke, like it's Halloween, like they're pranking. But then you could kind of see in their faces they were being serious.
But the two arrests were made.
1 second. When did this happen? It happened on Halloween. Let me just find out. It could be a ritual as well, because you know these damn devils. It's October 31st is one of the high unholy days. The mass stabbing involving 10 people, did that happen on the October the 31st, 2025? Okay. Okay. What day and time did that stabbing happen in Cambridgeshire? Saturday night. Okay, so that was the 1st of November then. All right. So it can't be Friday night. Okay, Saturday night. Just after the unholy day. So right on the day when SNAP benefits end as well, right? Or, well, yeah. Okay.
At the scene very, very shortly after the incident took place, so very reassuring to see such a quick and effective response from the emergency services. When I first arrived here, I've simply never seen as big a response to an emergency incident as there were in terms of police, fire, and ambulance. So very reassuring.
anything else to add?
Who tried to stop the attack. A train, one of them still. 11 people stabbed on a train, one of them still.
Well, they said 10, 9 were attacked, 9 were hurt. Now it's 11. Okay, so the number, there's variations.
Critical. A member of the train staff and a hero who tried to stop the attack. Initially, 2 suspects were arrested, both of them British men. But what was the motive? What triggered this frenzied attack? The aftermath was filmed by people at the station. The footage shows a chaotic scene. In one photograph, a glimpse of one of the suspects pinned to the ground under arrest. Police gave a few details of the 2 suspects. Police later freed one of the suspects, a 35-year-old Londoner. Police said he was not involved in the attack. The second suspect, a 32-year-old man, had just boarded the train in Peterborough when the attack happened. He's being questioned on suspicion of attempted murder. Was it a terror attack? It might have looked like that to begin with, but police don't think it was, though they haven't ruled it out.
At this stage, there is nothing to suggest that this is a terrorist incident.
Police did trigger the Operation Plato Code, but that doesn't denote terror. It just warns other emergency services to hold back while...
Look at the words they're using as well. They're going to add the word terror, terrorist to it. Okay.
Firearms officers deal...
30 years ago, when they would say the term terror or terrorist, that always alluded to the Irish, the IRA, Irish Republican Army. All right. Now, 30 years later, that term terrorist always, or T word, okay. I'm only saying what the news guy said, all right? So I'm not saying this, okay? I'm only saying what the news correspondent guy or the news guy was saying, all right? Okay, so that T word now alludes to usually people, Ishmael or so-called Arabs.
Deal with a dangerous...
Or people of color in general, right?
Armed suspect on the loose. Plato was later called off.
The overall response from officers has been incredible, though, and the way that the agencies are working together, worked together last
One
night.
of the biggest terrorists are these Edomites, so-called white men.
To bring the situation under control was fantastic. Speaking to the Chief Constable, he actually said that they were training for an Operation Plato incident only last week, so fresh in the memory, and it's terrible that they would have had to bring those skills.
Okay, you heard just what this guy said, this MP. He said that the officers were only training for an incident like this last week, and a week later it happens. All right, and look at the grin on his face. I don't know. It could be just the weather. It could be just him trying to keep it. Sometimes you could sometimes see the expression on a person's face whether they're telling the truth or not. I'm not. You know what? It's just maybe I'm looking too deep into it. But let's listen to what he said.
Into effect so quickly.
Among the reactions to the stab...
into effect, so it's terrible that they would have had to bring those skills. Incident only last week. We're training for an Operation Plato incident only last week, so fresh in the memory, and it's terrible that they would have had to bring those skills into effect so quickly.
Okay, so Operation Plato type incident, they're only training for it last week, which is probably towards the end of October, and then the incident happens a week later. So they let you know in between the lines, all right?
Among the reactions to the stabbings, a message from the King. My wife and I, he said, were truly appalled and shocked to hear of the dreadful knife attack that took place on board a train in Cambridgeshire last night.
We really believe you.
Our deepest sympathies and thoughts are with all those affected and their loved ones. We are particularly grateful to the emergency services for their response to this awful incident. What we don't know...
And well, what about that? Was it the so-called white girl, the Edomite from Russia or Poland, the blonde girl, who was a crisis actor in a previous incident, and then they used the most grimiest-looking Jake, I don't know whether that was real or AI, with dreadlocks to do the so-called stabbing, when that was bullshit. Those are crisis actors. So, the truth is coming out in these last days. The skirt is being lifted on these devils, man. All right? Let's go to scripture quickly, man. All right? Matthew 24:24. For there shall arise false Christs and false Hamashiachs and false prophets, and shall shew For there shall arise false Hamashiachs or false Christs and false prophets, and shall shew great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. They're trying to get the elect, trying to sway their mind, trying to make it think that this is good for you. But the thing is, you can't get the elect. The elect are preordained from the beginning to get this truth, understand it, and make it all the way through, right to the end, and beamed up into them chariots. You're only going to get your own people, the Edomites, the heathens, and also the 2/3 that believe in this world. Okay, that's the only people you're going to get. You ain't going to get nobody else. All right. All right, and this is the devil's nature anyway. Okay, their nature is, because they have everything. This is their world, and this is their nature to think about what to do next to get the thoughts on and popping. Us ultimately how Bashim Yashai controlling everything. The Lord is just using the devil on the left hand side to do what the Lord Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai wants. Okay, for everything to play out. So, things can go in the direction of the collapse of this world and society. All right, so we can have 2 Ezra 6 verse 9 play out, which is Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. All right, let's go to Micah 2. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. All right, let's go to verse 2. Now, this will give you a nice indication of who these MFers are today. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. Psalms 83, right? They oppress Jake, they oppress, so they can cut us off from being a nation. Okay, that's their nature, that's their MO, their modus operandi, their motivation. This is what they like to do. All right, this is what they get off to because they're just evil by nature. All right, so this is what they're trying to push, so they can have their world how they want it. They want their little Elysium, right? Where's that little news segment I was playing? Let's go with it.
So is the motive for the attack? If it wasn't terror, what was it? An argument that got out of hand, revenge for a perceived slight, or a mental health crisis? Whatever it was, the result was devastating.
All right. Okay, so you got to read in between the lines as well. And sometimes a search engine, just typing in, and I'm not even using Chat GPT, just using a regular Google search engine, that gives you quite a bit of information as well. The thought process. All right. All right, so I'm going to leave it there now. All praises to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahashai, Bahashim Rakakadash, Brakti Yahweh, Bahashim Yahashai. It's November now. Not long left till this year is up. So the Lord is definitely making things happen, man. The Lord is working. The Lord is not a man that he should lie. So as you can see, all these little bits and bobs happening around the world, all these little skirmishes, all these little scuffles, all these little incidents are coming together to paint a picture. All right. You heard what that Jake said as well, that light-skinned Jake. I believe he's some kind of politician. He said they were practicing for this lot. The police were practicing for an incident like this last week. Then a week later, it happens. And when he said that, look at his face. There was some kind of like a grin or a smirk. You got to look at these crisis actors as well. They're just failed actors trying to look all serious in front of the camera as well. All right. Okay. We got to keep the options open, but because we know how this devil works. All right. But ultimately, whether it's real or whether it's fake, it's all Yahweh Bahashim Yahashai pushing the agenda in terms of making things happen so this world, this system can collapse and our world can rise, okay, which is Jacob's kingdom and, in the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahashai, all right? Anyway, all praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahashai, Bashim Rakakadash, Mawatha Bad Babal, Kwam Yashrala, Shalom.